Yo, what's up YouTube? What's up everybody? We're back here with one more top 10 for you guys. We're going to be checking out top 10 scary last meal requests that will horrify you. I don't know how a meal request is going to horrify us unless it's like, hey, I want somebody's arm as my last meal and make sure it has 6 fingers on the hand, please. Like something like that, okay, I get it, but I'm interested in checking it out. It does interest me what people's last meal requests will be on death row. So hopefully this video is like that. If not, I'm going to find one and I'll come back with one eventually. But let's go ahead and tap into this one and see what they're talking about here.
The tradition of the last meal stretches back centuries. In fact, some speculate that it began out of fear of being haunted by the ghost of the executed, and some think it can be traced back to the last meal of Jesus. But what have been the strangest or even most horrifying ones ever requested? Let's find out. Welcome back everyone, thanks for tuning in to another video. My name is Kennedy, and today we are counting down the top 10 scary last meal requests that will horrify you. So let's get into it. Starting us off at number 10, we have Victor Fieger. So a little backstory about what landed this man on death row.
Forgot to switch the screens for you guys. Sorry about that. Let's go ahead and go with this one here. Hopefully this is a little better for you. All right, here we go.
The summer of 1960, Victor arrived in Dubuque, Iowa, and rented a room at a boarding house. But soon after he arrived, he began calling physicians from the Yellow Pages until he got a hold of Dr. Edward Bartles. Claiming a woman needed immediate medical attention, the doctor rushed to the location, but when he arrived, Victor kidnapped the doctor and drove across state lines to Illinois before killing him and fleeing. A few days later, he was arrested after trying to sell the late doctor's car, and eventually Fieger was tried and convicted in federal court for these crimes and sentenced to death. He tried to appeal his sentence, but on 2 occasions was denied. So on his final day, March 15th, 1963, prior to his hanging, Victor was offered a last meal. His request, however, was incredibly strange. All he asked for was a single olive with a pit, explaining that he hoped a tree symbolizing peace would sprout from his grave. Instead, officials found the olive pit in his suit pocket during burial.
Okay, that's an interesting last meal request. Just a single olive with a pit. Okay, interesting last meal request. Wouldn't have thought that, but what a strange case, man. You just called a doctor, committed murder, kidnapped him, took him away, committed murder, and tried to sell his car. Like, why, dude?
Moving on to number 9, Troy Davis. In August of 1989, after a series of alcohol-infused decisions, Troy Davis wound up at a Burger King with some friends. However, once they arrived, one of his friends began fighting with a homeless man over some booze, and it quickly escalated into a violent fight between the 2 men. At this moment, the security guard noticed the fight and began to walk over. But what these men were unaware of was that the security guard at the Burger King was actually an off-duty police officer. When he tried to intervene and get the men to cut it out, Davis allegedly pulled out his weapon and shot him dead. After a few days of hiding from authorities, Davis eventually came forward and turned himself in for the crime. However, during his trial, he later pleaded not guilty, saying it was not him but his friend who had pulled the trigger.
How senseless, right? To just throw your life away for these kind of things, man. It's always surprising to me when it shouldn't be. Just how simple, how easy people are willing to just throw away everything for something so stupid.
Saying it was not him but his friend who had pulled the trigger. The trial was long and complicated, but eventually he was sentenced to death, a verdict he tried to appeal many times. Finally, in 2011, after multiple rescheduling, protests, and denied appeals, his final day arrived, and for his last meal, he requested nothing, insisting that the meal would not be his last. Next up at number 8, Gary Carl Simmons Jr. In August of 1966, Simmons and his accomplice Timothy Milano were confronted by Wolf and his girlfriend, who showed up at their house asking for a debt to be repaid to them. However, unable to pay, a fight broke out and Milano shot Wolf before Simmons committed SA on the girlfriend and shoved her in a closet. From there, he began to to dismember the body, but thankfully the girlfriend managed to escape and ran to a neighbor's house to call the police.
Oh my god, dude. Like, these people have to have something already inside their head, a monster that's been in their soul for their life. You don't just... How old is this guy? He's probably in his 40s, 50s, and you now commit murder, and then you're dismembering the body. Just one day you have the ability to do this? That's just crazy. And then they sexually assaulted the girl?
By 1997, Simmons was sentenced to death for what he had done. When his last day came in 2012, he requested one Pizza Hut Supreme deep dish pizza with double mushrooms, double onions, double jalapeno peppers, and double pepperoni, a second pizza with 3 cheeses, olives, bell peppers, tomatoes, garlic, and Italian sausage, 8 10-ounce packs each of Parmesan cheese and ranch dressing, 8 ounces of jalapeno nacho cheese, 4 ounces of sliced jalapenos, 2 20-ounce cherry cokes, 2 large strawberry shakes, 2 pints of strawberry ice cream, and finally, 1 family-sized bag of Doritos nacho cheese flavor.
Wow.
All in all, it came to 29,000 calories.
Wow. I thought, maybe you guys know if I'm wrong, I thought you only get like $20 to spend on your last meal, something like that. I thought it was like a set amount. That's way over $20 what they just ordered, so I might be wrong. Maybe it's like $50 or something, but I thought it was like $20 you can only spend for your last meal.
Moving on to number 7, Odell Barnes.
That doesn't sound
In
right,
November
though.
of 1989, Odell Barnes broke into the home of Helen Bass while she was at work. However, when she arrived back at home, Barnes attacked and killed her before fleeing the scene. His trial was a circus of forensic evidence, human rights groups, and anti-death penalty protests. And following his conviction, an enormous amount of the public were calling for a life sentence instead. But the actions failed. Eventually he was found guilty and sentenced to death. Barnes firmly held his innocence in the crime right up until the morning of his execution, and when asked what he would like for a last meal, he strangely requested justice, equality, and world peace. If only that was something they could have provided.
Yeah, if only that was something he wanted prior to breaking in someone's home and murdering them. You know, maybe you wouldn't be in this situation. Ugh.
Next up at number 6, Ted Bundy. The notorious and downright evil killer who needs no introduction, Ted Bundy is of course one of the most infamous criminals of all time. Convicted of killing and committing other horrors to at least 30 women, Bundy had one of the most notorious trials in history that ultimately ended in him being sentenced to death for the outrageous atrocities he committed. However, despite his usual flair for the dramatic, when his final day came, he declined a meal. As a result, he was given the default last meal: steak, eggs, hash browns, a piece of toast with butter and jam, juice, and coffee.
That is actually a very good default last meal. Like, I would take that right now. Not as my last meal, please, but I would take that meal right now. I'm kind of hungry, man. I can go for some steak. That's not a bad last meal. Come on. Default? Shh.
But for whatever reason, didn't eat a bite and was executed later that morning. Moving on to number 5, Robert Anthony Madden. Having been convicted in September of 1985 for the death of Herbert Elber Megason and his son Don Gary Lynn Megason, Madden never once wavered on his innocence. Having been a cook prior to his death sentence for the crimes he denied committing, unlike many of the others on this list, Robert Anthony Madden actually had a very selfless last request. In May 1997, instead of requesting a last meal for himself, he requested that his last meal be donated to a homeless person. But sadly, his request was denied. His last statement was, "I apologize for your loss and your pain, but I didn't kill those people. Hopefully we will all learn something about ourselves and each other, and we will learn to stop the cycle of hate and vengeance and come to value what is really going on in this world." So I guess what's scary about this man is just the fact that an innocent man could likely have been killed for a crime he didn't commit. Moving on to number 4, Thomas J. Grosso. Convicted for taking the life of 87-year-old Hilda Johnson, whom he strangled with her own Christmas lights, as well as the 81-year-old Leslie Holtz, whose social security checks he stole after the deed. Shockingly, only 2 weeks after being arrested, Thomas J. Grosso confessed everything to the police, and by September of 1992, he was sentenced to death. Now, as far as last meals go, Grosso's was extravagant, having requested 24 steamed mussels, 24 steamed clams, a Burger King double cheeseburger, half a dozen barbecue spare ribs, 2 strawberry milkshakes, half a pumpkin pie with whipped cream and chopped strawberries, and a 16-ounce can of SPaghettiOs, all served at room temperature. However, it was his final words about his last meal that really stood out. Less than an hour before he died, he issued his 4th and final statement, saying, "I did not get my SPaghettiOs. I got spaghetti. I want the press to know this."
What, dude? Wild. Yeah, I mean, dang, these guys really get their requests fulfilled. I mean, they're asking for some wild stuff, man. Damn, if I ask my wife for some of the meals these guys are getting, I get a smack across the back of the head, you know what I mean?
Moving on to number 3, Ricky Ray Rector. In March of 1981, Rector and a group of friends visited a local nightclub, but after one of his friends was denied entry for not being able to pay cover, Rector pulled out his weapon and killed the guard almost instantly. Following this, he and his friends fled the scene, and Rector spent the next few days hiding with friends and family until his sister convinced him to turn himself in. He agreed on the condition that his childhood friend be the cop that comes by the house. However, when the officer arrived, Rector did not confess as promised, but shot and killed him before running out into the backyard and attempting to take his own life as well. While the shot destroyed his frontal lobe, he actually survived and still faced trial for his crimes. There was a lot of controversy surrounding his sentence, as some felt he shouldn't have been fit for trial, but ultimately he was sentenced to death for what he had done. Now, compared to some others on this list, his last meal request was normal enough: steak, chicken, cherry flavored Kool-Aid, and a full pecan pie. However, the eerie part is that Rector left the pie behind and joked with the guard that he was saving it for later. Moving on to number 2, James Edwards.
Man, that is a crazy one, man. He once again, you killed the bouncer or something just for no reason, security. Then requested for his childhood friend, I think they said, who was maybe a detective on the case, an officer, and that guy came in and he killed him too. Damn.
Moving on to number 2, James Edward Smith. Born October 19th, 1952 in Kentucky, prior to his run-in with the law, James worked as a tarot card dealer in New Orleans and later a taxi driver in Houston, Texas. However, in March of 1983, Smith was involved in a robbery that ultimately resulted in him killing a clerk before attempting to evade the authorities. But soon after leaving the building, he was caught and charged for his crime. However, strangely, when his sentence was upheld by the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals in 1987, Smith waived his appeals in an attempt to speed up his execution. Initially, he was set to be executed in 1988, and so the day before, Smith requested a last meal of dirt. But as this request did not fall under the prison's list of approved foods, he was denied. But it gets more interesting from here. According to Texas A&M University soil experts, the dirt was believed to be eaten in voodoo rituals, which Smith practiced and believed in. And so it has been suggested that Smith had hoped to perform a voodoo ritual that he believed would assist in his reincarnation. However, he was not actually executed as scheduled in 1988, as in the morning his mother's attorney asked for an appeal, claiming he was incompetent. Fast forward to 1990 and he was scheduled again, refusing his appeals despite that his mother had once again tried to get the court to appeal the sentence. Finally, as he had tried to request 2 years prior, he asked for dirt, but was again denied his request and brought yogurt instead. And last up in our number
Man, he was set on that dirt. My man wanted a mouthful of dirt. Like she said, I guess a voodoo ritual, man, thinking it's gonna save him in the next life, reincarnate him, something along them lines. If you know more about that voodoo spell, let me know, man. I've got a lot of dirt around my house, so I might be set for a long time. Let's keep it going.
Number 1 spot, Lawrence Russell Brewer. In 1998, Lawrence, along with 2 other men, Sean Berry and John King, was responsible for the disgusting homicide of James Byrd Jr. In short, Lawrence and his pals were proclaimed white supremacists, and Byrd, a black man, was tragically the victim of their vile and hate-fueled crime. Lawrence, along with King, was sentenced to death and maintained he had no regrets for his actions, claiming he would even do it again if he could. However,
Wow.
It's not just his evil actions that made him well known, it was also his last meal request. Having requested a massive helping of food, including 2 chicken fried steaks and sliced onions dripping in gravy, a triple meat bacon cheeseburger with everything on the side, 1 cheese omelet with ground beef, tomatoes, onions, bell peppers, and jalapenos, a big bowl of fried okra with ketchup, 1 pound of barbecued meat, and half a loaf of white bread, 3 fajitas with all the toppings, a Pizza Hut meat lovers pizza, a pint of Bluebell vanilla ice cream, a slab of peanut butter fudge with crushed peanuts on top, and 3 root beers. But when the food arrived, Brewer refused to eat, saying he wasn't hungry, which ultimately resulted in Texas terminating last meals for inmates. Well, that's all I got.
Whoa, what? Let's play that back. Texas got rid of last meals for inmates?
Which ultimately resulted in Texas terminating last meals for inmates.
Wow,
well, that's all I got
did
for you today,
not know
friends. I
that.
hope you liked this one. Make sure to hit that subscribe button before you go, and let me know if you had to pick a last meal, what would it be?
That was what I was gonna ask you guys. So dang, this guy ruined it for everybody else. Which, you know, I think when it comes to your last meal, how many people are even freaking hungry at that point, dude? You're about to die in a matter of hours. Are you even hungry at that point? I don't think I'd be hungry. I don't think I'd want to eat. Now, it doesn't mean I wouldn't put in a last meal request, although I'm in Texas, so maybe I don't get one now because that bastard there. But let me know if you guys had to make a last meal request. What would it be, man? You know, mine would probably be along the lines of some steak, some chicken wings, pizza, hamburger, ice cream, milkshake. I'm sure there's a lot more I could think of if I had the time, but dang, yeah, those are some of my favorite foods right there. Let me know what some of your favorite foods are and what your last meal request would be. All right, definitely appreciate y'all hanging around to this point. If you did, thank you so much, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.